Hi everyone, welcome. We're just going to be looking at the pages from the book of Joshua. We're going to cover this page today. It's got a lot of text on it. We're not going to be looking at every single word, but it starts with chapter 2, verse 15. And so God raised up the judges and saved them out of the hands of those who plundered them. And then in this image, you can see that we've got basically an idol at the bottom with the people. They're having a little pagan celebration. There's the fire. They're dancing around the fire with the musical instruments. They've got the silhouettes for the people, so you can see that they're dancing. They're basically naked, and that is a reflection of the kind of pagan festivals that what the text is talking about, where the Israelites come into the land through the conquest, but then they end up getting involved with a lot of these local traditions. In the centre, in the yellow there, then is the Baal that they're worshipping. That's actual Baal rather than just an idol. That picture, that particular one is a statue that's found that's period. The real statue is just little, but this is like a large version in the comic to show what it was like. But the point being that it's the same style, the right style for the era. Above then in the blue we've got a little sort of look ahead, so it's talking about the fact that God's going to raise up judges to help the people of Israel. And so in the centre you've got Samson, to the left you've got Deborah and Shamgar, and then on the right you've got Othniel and Barak. So they're just kind of, it's a bit of foreshadowing. I mean, this whole section is essentially just reiterating stuff and setting up the book. As we get down to the next line of panels is when it begins being sort of narrative, and we start getting into the actual narrative of the book. The next panel, where there's a lot of speaking, it says God's anger burned against Israel, and then again he reaffirms, because this nation's transgressed against my covenant, I will no longer drive out the people, etc., etc. And that's the same essentially as what he said with the angel Bochem. Then in the next image we've got the list of like all the different nations that's surrounding them. So Philistines, Canaanites, familiar, Amorites, Jebusites, Hivites, Perizzites, Girgashites, Hittites, Sidonians, and Arameans, or Arameans it is, because they're from Aram, I remember. You can see on the little black map then the sort of the rough places where these tribes were kind of based at the time, to give you an idea. And then in the bottom right corner, the text is all about the marriage between the people of Israel and the people of the land. Here you've got a Canaanite man and an Israelite lady marrying in front of a Baal. So this is basically what God's saying. You keep accepting their customs, intermarrying with their people and becoming more and more like them, and the point is that Israel's supposed to be different and holy and show people how to worship God and stuff like that. So again, it's just all kind of setting up the situation, what's happened since the book of Joshua. And then let's see if we've got it on the screen. Yep. The children of Israel did that which was evil in God's sight, and forgot their God, and served the Baals and Asheroth, and therefore his anger burned against them. Then he raises up Cushan. I should have practiced this before starting it. Rishathaim, I think it is. He's the king of Mesopotamia. Now the name Cushan-Rishathaim it's another one of these names that pops up, particularly common in Judges, where the name is probably not the name of the person, like not specifically what they would have called themselves. This one means Cushan is probably like Cushite of, and then in Rishathaim is like of double evil. Some people think it could be a play on his title, which might mean of two rivers, because he's the king of Mesopotamia. But it's so when we take his name and then we go into the history books and we and look at Stela and like Amarna texts and stuff like that, we're like, is there a guy with this name? And like, oh no, there isn't. Well, it's not a surprise, because it seems that this is just a label. Now, it's possible that the reason that they use a label, well, there's different reasons. Potentially it could just be the Holy Spirit. The actual person's name isn't terribly important, but they want you to know something, or it's using the text in a certain way that to its own device. Or it could be that at the time where it was written, which was this was history that was sort of well known, it's still potentially 150 years before, so you might think that the history wouldn't be well known, but with the oral histories and the way that things are working these days, it's quite possible that this figure is well known. So to just call him Cushan of double evil, like, yeah, of course, it is. So I think that's kind of how it, what happens. He enslaves the people, and in the images you can see the design of him. I've drawn him as dressed in this very distinctive scale mail armour, which was the period for the area of Mesopotamia. They had these chariots with all covered in scale and bronze and everything. You can also see a big symbol on his chest, and that is the symbol of the king of Mesopotamia at the time. It's common to their whole dynasty, so I was able to just use it without worrying that this might be indicating the wrong king. It's a dynastic symbol of their house, with these two wings and a star and everything like that. In behind him you can see there's two banners, and one is basically a stylized picture of a tree, and they believe, and so they're both drawn from seals that are contemporary to the time. It's believed that the tree is like a symbol which is supposed to be like the tree of life and things like that. That's a symbol that they would use at the time to represent things like eternal life and fertility and things like that. Next to them is just a weird mythological creature or something they've got. It's got like a bull head, or maybe it's a cherubim, from the Mesopotamian standpoint. It's got a bull's head, it's got big wings, and again drawn from a seal. And then in the next picture you can see all the slaves and then the horses and everything, as he's enslaved the people. Then on this row next is where we're introduced to Othniel again, but Othniel is older now. As I mentioned before, I did a blog all about trying to figure out the time scale of this, and what's not clear just from reading the text is that actually a bit of time has elapsed. So the bit of the story that we had a moment ago where it was introducing us to Othniel as someone who took Debir for Caleb and got the wife and all that, that was when he was young, but this is actually quite a lot later. So now he's essentially quite old. So I've drawn him at about 60 or something like that. But he, like Caleb, who's his kinsman, he's still as strong today as he was when he was younger, and so yeah, he's a big guy, and he's got this same, you can see, same cloak, same cloak pin with the lion and everything. Let's get this on the screen for you. And then the next image is he's got his shofar. It's blowing his horn to call the people of Israel together to fight, and so he's there, and he's got his little shield bearer guy, a bit like Jonathan and the shield bearer, and the shield itself has a lion, the Lion of Judah, on there. In the background, you can see the ragtag group of Israelites, some with round shields, some with, rectangular shields and different weapons, some with axes, some with spears. It's not a formalized, army under a king or anything like that. And then next is the, exciting kind of part where they begin to clash. Here it was fun to obviously use some artistic license, I guess, but not in the sense that I'm moving away from what the text says, but the text says they fought, so then you get to just draw a battle, and and so I've got him in his chariot, the Cushan, and he's racing through the battlefield. He's got his spear, it's bloody, and then we've got Othniel. He's basically jumping, and I've got him kind of jumping supernaturally high. The implication is that if he's jumped off the floor, it's a bit like Samson, where he's like super strong, and the Lord's empowering him to do amazing feats and all that. Or you can't see what's happened, so it could be that he's jumping down off of off of the side of a canyon or something like that. In the background, you can see all Cushan's men, and again 2 banners with symbols which are basically drawn from seals. One is basically like a griffin, a lion with an eagle's head and wings, and the other is a big giant scorpion. You can see that I've given Cushan's troops a kind of green colour scheme. And then the next panel is where the action continues. So Othniel jumps out. The spear is heading towards his chest. He's got his short sword out, but then if you look carefully in fact, if I zoom in, at the next panel, you can see that he's drawn his short sword across, pulled the spear out of line, and then landed and hit Cushan with the shield rather than the sword. So that's catching him unawares and knocking him straight out of the chariot. Then grabbing him, he's got him around the throat with his sword, getting him to essentially to surrender. We don't know what happened to Cushan, but because it says the Lord delivered him into Othniel's hand, and his hand prevailed against him. So it doesn't say specifically that. It's sort of implied that he kills him, but it doesn't say specifically that it kills him. So at that point we cut away, and that's the end of that scene. The next panel, which we'll cover next time, is where Othniel kind of died, and it moves on to the next story. So I hope you found this enlightening. I think we've kind of covered most of the little elements that have made up some of the research and images and everything involved, and we'll see you next time.